What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets. Welcome to another day of NBA basketball. I did not play much last night. Probably would have done okay. I actually threw a couple of like little tiny lineups in that did fine. But ready to get after it tonight on a Tuesday. And we actually have, unlike most Tuesdays, instead of a 2-game slate, we've got a nice little 5-gamer, which is actually kind of a fun slate. And kudos to DraftKings for making the pricing a little bit more interesting. Like we don't have the, okay, we will, let me just say we don't have the obvious value, and we probably will. There was 9 guys scratched yesterday for games. It's going to keep happening. It's very hard to play NBA when you're on the road, and I have to be on the road again today, so I'm going to have to debate whether or not I want to actually leave my lineups in. But just keep that in mind, because there's a lot of changes that happened yesterday that sort of changed a lot with the slate. Josh Jackson starting is one that people didn't even catch on to, and I have no idea why. I would have been all over that play, but it was too late by the time that I saw that he was out. And Jeremy Grant that he was starting, and Jeremy Grant was out. Anyway, just keep that in mind. There's going to be a lot of late subbing. So these are our first look videos. Just wanted to remind you guys, and also you can check out all my plays, my early builds, and everything on TrueDFS.com, as well as Sheets and projections. With that said, Sheets, you had a decent night. It sounded like okay, and tell us a little bit about that, and we'll jump into the slate.
Yeah, DraftKings I did pretty nicely. And by the way, thanks for coming to the live stream last night, everybody. It was kind of fun. You got to see me struggle to build my lineups on the spot. And DraftKings did pretty well actually in the MMEs, in the 20 lineups I put in. And on FanDuel I ran really hot. I cashed in the monster by 0.1 points or something like that.
Oh wow, that's always fun.
Right at the end. Yeah, I had Reggie Jackson in the last game, who, man, that guy's got no shame. I mean, he was like 4 for 30, and he just kept on freaking chucking, which is, hey, it's good for me.
That's what he does.
And that included having a real big dud. I had Miles Turner, who only had 12 fantasy points in that lineup, but I had Valanciunas, who was a smash. And dude, Valanciunas was very low owned on DraftKings. And he did really well for me over there. And so I did pretty nice. I'm off to a pretty good start in the NBA, I have to say. And and the other thing I would say is, you mentioned, using my sheets and things like that. One thing I've been noticing when I'm combining my sheets with any optimizer with any reasonable ownership fade, like I like to use SaberSim, but I'm sure between Roto Grinders HQ and the other ones, you could do it too. I've been getting some cool looking lineups that are kind of low owned, and which I really, really like in the NBA. Like it's when you have like all this chalk and you just know you have no chance right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. But like when I look at my lines, like, boy, that looks really weird. And that's usually for me like a good sign leading into the NBA slates. Yeah. And so stuff that happened last night, like we got like this Luke Kennard low owned play that ended up doing well in DraftKings. So I'm really looking forward to continuing on with the NBA in my process, and hopefully you guys kind of come along. And between my kind of more quantitative approach and Bobby's very, very basketball heavy, instinctive, and just really just shitload of experience and awesomeness approach, you'll get like 2 different looks on how to win. And hopefully you guys can learn from both of us.
Yeah, I feel same thing. I think it's a good match, and we've always done really well with the NBA. So the thing that's interesting is, like last night, for example, and maybe people weren't aware, like Joe Val was going to be a popular play, right? And he ended up being really low owned because of what we talked about earlier in the day about Robert Williams with Horford being out. Right. Robert Williams was a really good play. And by the way, Robert Williams was a really good play. He put up 44 fantasy points.
I had them both in my DraftKings.
There you go. That's beautiful. But that's what people are going to do. They'll flock to one way of thinking. And it's really important to remember that, hey, that other guy who's supposed to be whatever owned, even the sites that are showing him is going to be really high owned, they're not going to be as high owned because of that. And what you can do is play them together like you did, which is a great thing to do. Or you can just pick the guy you originally had and sort of avoid the other guy. And we just got to remember those kind of things, because they're going to come up every day in the NBA. It's just the nature of the game on a full season.
One other thing I'd like to mention is something that you do a lot, which, boy, I wish there was a way to test this or to back test it or whatever. That'll be another one of my projects that I'm probably never going to do. But when you have a play that's like a real smash on one site, and to just play him on the other one. The idea being that maybe he's not quite as good of a play on the other side, but people are going to just overweight and just totally smash him on the site where he's best.
Right.
and probably in their head talk themselves off of playing him on the other side because you know what? Maybe they don't want to have like that much of exposure of him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I got my Valanciunas exposure on FanDuel. I don't need to have it on DraftKings. And so maybe those guys are actually a little under-owned, even relative to their even projection on the other side. You were on that you've been on that a long time, and instinctively it seems to be a pretty sharp way to play.
Yeah, I love doing that. And, in other sports, I find it even like in football, I think is the best sport to utilize something like that. And baseball, well, no, baseball is probably the best sport to utilize something like that. Football would be next. But basketball is still a great spot to do it. And it really does make a lot of like, for example, last night, Jason Tatum with $1,000, 8,700 on DraftKings 97. And he was only like 15% owned on DraftKings, I think it was.
Right.
And he was 3% owned on FanDuel. And of course he smashed and put up 62. And I played one little cheapo FanDuel lineup and I put him in it because you can tell when these guys are going to get lower ownership. When somebody's getting 10x ownership and the price discount is not like, 50% of your salary, you probably should be looking at them on both sides. Anyway. Let's jump into tonight's slate. Why don't we pull up your scrin? Guys, we're trying to figure out the Zoom issue where it's not showing our faces while we do the screen share. Not that it matters for you. You see our beautiful faces enough as it is. But in the meantime, we're going to it'll show our full screen while we're going through it, and we'll talk through each of the plays. All right, Sheets. So let's call it up, and we'll get started with game by game here because this I like this is a slate I'm kind of a little bit upset. Like, I don't want to say mass entry, but I would love to get a few things in if I didn't have a family thing I had to take care of again. It's a really interesting slate because there aren't people price. There aren't as many things that stand way out, yet the ownership, as we know in basketball, will always concentrate. So it's just an interesting slate to me. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. And starting with that, let's start with, starting for me, the Philadelphia side is the first place, and it's not going to be different. Don't get me wrong. My guess is as the day goes on, my early ownership projections are going to be more and more wrong. I know he hasn't put up the monster game. We've had the blowouts so far with Embiid. We've had them sort of limiting him a little bit, but the blowouts have been the big part of it. Embiid is 9,800 and Luka is 10,900. And one of these guys, and that would be Embiid, to me actually looks like themselves. Now I like Luka tonight, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But Embiid is, he is I think this is like, he would be where I would be starting my cash game lineups, probably even ahead of Luka. I know he's questionable. I don't buy into it. If there's a national TV game, I think it might be wrong or sometime this year, like early in the year, but I swear it was like 15 for 15 last year. Every time they had a national televised game that he was on there. And part of that was he was in the MVP hunt and all that stuff. And they were trying to hold on to the #1 record, but this is a tight game that they need to win games, and he wants to show up, not just show up Simmons, but like, I think Embiid is a great play, is the long and short of it, I guess, and maybe the long and long of it. But I don't have a whole lot of interest in anything else on the Philadelphia side in this game. I do think as we, transitioning over to the Knicks, I think that Alec Burks is in play as a potential value, but my guess is we get better value coming later in the day. Alec Burks always plays well against Philly. Since he was there. And by the way, very, very, very solid fantasy point per minute guy for the most part. It's a little different. We have Derrick Rose there now. There's not like, Kemba Walker's there. So his minutes are not really so secure at any number. But I do think Alec Burks, especially on the road games, this is unfortunately a home game for them, but is a guy I want to look at as the season goes on. He's going to have, early on, he'll project as a decent value play. My guess is we find better, but in the meantime, I don't mind using him. And I don't mind Barrett, but not a guy who I'm trying to make sure to get in or anything. Julius Randle, if you want to play him on the other side of Embiid, I have no problem with that whatsoever. This guy's put up 62 and 68 and 3 out of, and then 48.5 in the other game that I think was a blowout. He plays all the minutes. He does all the things. I think we just have to start treating Julius Randle like he belongs near this top tier. So I'm not as high on Randle as I am on Embiid, but maybe you could even argue that could be a mistake. So I really like those guys. I don't think I'm going to get involved in the Mitch Rob game tonight. I just think it's a tough matchup for him. And I honestly don't know what they're going to do other than him, though. I mean, I also think that Noel is supposed to be back tonight, or, supposedly it's against his former team. And I mean, Mitch Rob has been great fantasy point per minute, but I think that, my basic interest in this game is going to mostly be Embiid and Randle. How about you?
So First of all, with respect to your comment about Joel Embiid, I think Embiid is going to be on that the Anthony Davis thing from last year, or LeBron from last year, when just every day he's just going to have a Q tag, just because.
Yep.
And he's going to play like almost all the games. You know what I
mean? His knees are banged up. That's the only thing.
Right, but I think as are like LeBron and ADs.
Right.
But I feel as though as we get into the season, we're going to start to learn there's going to be, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but there's going to be some system to figure out Embiid. You know what I mean? Like, I feel as though you're going to be able to like ignore the Q tag for like a while. And then if he's actually hurt, they'll probably give you some kind of tell or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm presuming he's playing. I sort of agree with you. The only guy I really have a lot of interest in this game is Embiid. I don't really have him prioritized over Luka necessarily. I don't have him necessarily worse either. I just have him very similar. And again, these are all early looks, disclaimer. But Embiid is really the only person I have interest in. And as far as the Knicks go, I guess all the value is not that great as it stands right now, right? Like you said, things could open up and it's all sort of fragile. So I'm really like dumpster diving to find good point per dollar plays really that I'm confident in. I mean, RJ Barrett would be the closest thing, and even that's not great. So I'm kind of with you here. I think that I'm going to find most of my exposure from other games. Tyrese Maxey, I guess he's okay, but 6K is kind of rough. So for me, either Embiid or nothing probably.
Yeah, I want to throw in on FanDuel, especially Tobias Harris stands out, but he's probably going to be like 40% owned on FanDuel, and he's 7,400 over there. He's 8K on DraftKings, and I think that on DraftKings he's going to end up closer to 10%. Just that his, what I wanted to point out about Harris, whether or not you want to use it tonight, it's not an ideal matchup or anything, but his rebound numbers are up, his assist numbers are up. Without Simmons there, he really does get an extra boost. So we can give him like, treat him like maybe like he's a little bit, he's not the 6,700 guy that we love to play. You know what I mean? He's he belongs in the 7K to 8K range without Ben Simmons. I don't know how I'll play him tonight, but I do want to mention that, just something to look out for. And I want to try and on these shows incorporate a little bit of my FanDuel takes as we go along. And I certainly will do it for live whenever I'm here. Unfortunately, today I have a thing, I can't be here. But in general, I think we have some people who only play on FanDuel, so I want to try and cater to that. Golden State side of the ball on the next game, Golden State OKC, which I'm guessing is the next one on there. It's a bunch of guys who sort of rate to be middlingly good plays, and then Steph Curry, who if you just look at the numbers and see what he's doing this year, it's really hard for me to see Curry not having a big game here. It's also very hard for me to see Oklahoma City staying in any game. But, it's going to happen sometime. They're going to be in a game. I don't know if I have a whole lot I want to do with this game. I guess I'll bring up a guy I've talked about a little bit as a longer shot GPP play. Hasn't shot the ball especially well, hasn't been awful, hasn't been whatever, but Damian Lee is still getting minutes, has an upside of close to 30 minutes, probably going to play around 23 or 24, but Damian Lee is an interesting pivot off of Burks when you consider there might be more opportunity for him, especially when you factor in the blowout angle. So I think Damian Lee is a long shot GPP play. He's always a guy who can get hot too and put up 30 fantasy points for you or even more. So I like that quite a bit. On the OKC side, it's going to be really hard for me to keep playing. First of all, they're playing a lot of guys. Shea is always going to have an upside to put up a monster game, and obviously the downside to really just completely dud like he did the first two games, largely due to the blowout factor. I think Shea is a really interesting play, but I feel like if I was going to play Steph, I probably would be looking at playing Shea. I don't think I'm going to play Steph, even though it scares me a little not to. So I probably won't get to Shea, but I do like him. I just think that you're asking for a lot by just even the game staying close. And then you need him to be really try and take control, which he hasn't been doing as much of as sort of I'd hoped he would be this season. Josh Giddy had a monster game the other night. I don't think I'm going to chase that. I actually like Giddy as a player. I think he's going to be really good. I feel like I could say that about a lot of guys on this team, but they just split up the minutes too evenly, with the exception of Shea, that I don't know what to do. And the other guy would be Lou Dort, but I guess, again, to sum up this game for me, if I was going to play it, I would probably try to get a little mini stack, maybe with Dort and Shea. And I would play Steph on the other side, and you could potentially even include Wiggins in that. But I don't think I'm going to do that. My favorite thing is probably going to be Damian Lee as a long shot play if we don't get more value, which we probably will.
For me, the best play in this game, aside, Curry's obviously a good play. I don't know if I'm going to get there though. But I think there are better spend ups. For me, the best play is Lou Dort. You mentioned him near the end. He could play anywhere from 28 to 40 freaking minutes. If they feel like having him chase Steph around, whatever. He could play a bunch. Again, I don't know what Oklahoma City's plans are for the whole season, pretty much, but they get in a game with Golden State, in front of their fans. I mean, they'll try to win it. Let's put it that way.
I think so.
So I like Dort a lot. And I really, and I also like two others. I like Darius Baisley from Oklahoma City. And I really like your Damian Lee play from Golden State.
Yeah.
I like that a ton. He rates to be a decent enough point per dollar play. And he rates to be low owned, which is not something you get all too often. Mm-hmm. And just kind of sneaky. He's like kind of in the game sometimes where I don't think he's going to be in the game, which is kind of cool, Yeah. And you know what, if this game does blow out, I think he could be in for that too. So I do like that a lot. And the guy who, again, we don't like to play, but he's just really freaking cheap is Wiggins. He's 5,800. I don't know. It's a 5-game slate. You got to find someone to play, and he is going to rate to be a really, really strong play. Again, it's not a guy we'd like to play that much, but it's it's no denying that he's going to rate really well. So for me, it'll be on the Golden State side. Damian Lee will probably be my favorite, and then Wiggins and Curry, and then on Oklahoma City, favorites would be Dort, and then Baisley.
Yeah, I hear you with all that. It's just, you got to worry like this. Every game that OKC plays, you got to worry about them getting blown out, and this one is no exception. By the way, even if they get blown out, Curry could still make 10 threes in 3 quarters. You know what I mean? So I might have to revisit my Curry take. The reason why we're not playing Curry, and I'll transition over to the other game, and I'll start with the Houston side, but I will say that the most popular guy on the slate is going, or I think the guy who's going to be the most popular spend up on the slate by far is going to be Luka. This game is another one that we should worry about, though. Personally, I think that Jason Kidd is awful. I think it was a terrible job by them. I mean, you basically are one of the biggest downgrades possible in coaching to lose Carlisle and get Jason Kidd back, who basically, turned Giannis into I don't know what the hell he was doing with Giannis and Milwaukee. They don't know. I just really feel worried about Luka's temporary career. I'm not worried about him in the long run, but if you think this game can stay close, and there's no, that Houston potentially could be competitive. They've got a little bit of feistiness, but they're going to get smoked so much of the time. It would be the normal guys for them, and that's what no one is going to play. So I would say that maybe you could consider Luka. And the truth is, why is Christian Wood not a thing here? Like, this guy's got an absolutely massive ceiling. I don't think he's going to be played tonight. And I think he's a terrific run back if you want to play Luka. I really think what you said about both sites is Kevin Porter is the guy in this game who stands out for that. I don't want to, Kevin Porter is not a guy you want to play with a bunch of other low-owned plays, because there is a huge range of outcomes for him. But he's already got a game of 47 this season. 6,800 might be a little bit much, obviously, and he's 5,900 on FanDuel, so he'll be owned over there. But I'm just saying he sort of fits the mold of what we were talking about playing the guys on the other site. And I love Jalen Green. I think he's always going to have a ceiling. I think all year long, I could just say it. You could put any price tag on him below 7K, and I'll probably say he's a totally good tournament play, because he's going to chuck. He can play. He's used to playing with guys. He's not a rookie who came in the league out of college. He came in from playing, with grown men, and he looks the part so far. So he seems to be finding himself. Any of those guys, especially Christian Wood, though, would be my favorite run backs, because I don't like Dallas's front line defense. And on the other side, it's going to be Luka. I completely understand while we're looking for value, Jalen Brunson and Dwight Powell are going to show up. I don't know if I want to get into that today, personally. I think that my favorite plays would be Luka or KP with one of those Houston guys, or one or two of those Houston guys.
So for me, I'm going to go the opposite analysis with respect to your Kevin Porter play. I'm going to do it differently. So on FanDuel, I'm going to start with that. FanDuel, one of my favorite plays, and it's going to rate really, really well, is going to be KP.
Well, that's what I just said.
I thought you said Kevin Porter.
Kevin Porter is KP. Oh, Kristaps Porzingis?
Oh, I thought you meant Kevin Porter.
I did. But then I said KP at the end. I said I like KP a lot on both sides. Yes.
Right. So, my example though, like he's going to rate to be like really like an extremely good play on FanDuel.
Right.
And he's going to get like probably a bunch of ownership over there. But like we were saying, maybe not as much on DraftKings. I'm kind of hoping for that because I kind of want to play him there.
Yeah.
The other thing is that what you're not leaving out, but we have to address is probably the chalkiest play on the board is going to come from either Jalen Brunson or Dwight Powell. Just it's a small slate, and these guys are both cheap. And you know what? We talked about this before with Dwight Powell. I mean, who died and left Dwight Powell good chalk? He's one of those value plays that I think is somewhat fragile. It's kind of a shame that they haven't let any indication that they're going to give Moses Brown any run here, because I would try him off the bench, but I think he's just DNP CD for like a lot of the season.
Right.
Unless somebody gets injured, because what's his name? Because Kristaps can play the 5, if he has to.
Well, they've got Kleber and Willie Cauley-Stein also.
And they have Willie Cauley-Stein. They have Kleber, right, like you said. So, so for me, I think that again, I think Luka's a really, really strong play. I think the game can stay close, and even if he doesn't, same thing with respect to Curry. I think that Luka can get a triple double in the first half. If things go his way. I mean, I've seen that happen. So I do like him, and I think that if you didn't think Luka's been so great recently, I think this is what are they call it, get right spot, whatever it is. So I feel as though he can do really well. On Houston, I don't really have much of anything except for the guy you mentioned, who I think is a really, really good play, and that's Christian Wood. Christian Wood is one of my top 10 quote unquote values given price, given everything, and upside and raw points. And I have him less than 10% owned right now. And if that's the case, let's do it. So I like Christian Wood. I agree with you there. I like Kristaps on both sides. I like Luka. And you have to make a decision on what you want to do with that value with Powell and Brunson, because they are going to rate as like two of the only values unless something comes up.
Yeah, it feels like a stack and pray situation for this game if you want to play it. That's what I would say. The Dallas guys are going to pop off, but at the same time, if anybody in Houston's going to keep this game close, you could play Christian Wood and Jalen Green. You could play Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr. and Christian Wood. I like all three of these guys if they can somehow manage to keep the game close. But Jalen Green and Wood are definitely my favorites.
All right, Lakers, San Antonio. What do you got?
All right, so they're going to at some point let Anthony Davis start taking over. They did it in the first game, as kindly he made me some nice money on the first game, which was really a good opening night. Almost had a shot to take on the monster because of it, and nobody played him. I think at 9,200 on DK, they've moved his price up on FanDuel, so making him very, very tough at 10-5 on this slate, but I think it's still playable. I just think 9,200 is a lot more appealing. I think it's going to continue to be Anthony Davis for me, but they clearly, after they're trying to get Westbrook a little bit more involved and no one's going to play him. I still don't think I'm going to be crazy with it. The thing is, LeBron is questionable tonight, and there's a chance like you might get some late news there. And LeBron's questionables are going to matter this season, because I don't think he's out there running to try and get the MVP. I think they're trying to find their rhythm together, but they have Westbrook, a genuine guy who can spell him. So if anything comes up and it's like, oh, we're really going to call him a game time decision, we're going to wait till he warms up, and it's not 2.5 hours before, and we don't have the word at 6:30 Eastern time. I think it's a spot where you might want to take a shot on. Maybe you can always pivot it over to a Donovan Mitchell or so. I don't know, but Westbrook and Davis, then Westbrook, and Westbrook is definitely a longer shot play, but I do like those guys. I like Derek White. I'm not sure I'm crazy about the ownership. So what I would do is I'll just go ahead and play Keldon Johnson here. I love the price on Keldon Johnson. I think that actually we're going to see him have plenty of games right around 20, and we're going to see him have plenty of games in the 40s. And I think that he's a little too talented at 5,200 to not really be popping off the page projection wise. I think this is a spot where he could really be great on both sides. He's 5,600 on FanDuel. So Keldon Johnson, Derek White are both super interesting to me, but I don't love the ownership on White, and I much prefer it on Johnson because you get the savings. And DeJounte Murray hasn't really had that monster game this season, but this is a good spot for him. I'm probably not going to go there. The same way I'm probably not going to be. I'll consider the Podol thing as the day runs out. I think he's interesting as well, but I think it's my favorite is Keldon Johnson on the other side.
I do like DeJounte Murray. I also like the last two, the two other guys you mentioned. So Keldon Johnson and Derek White. I like all three of them from San Antonio. I don't know if I want to play all three, but a 5-game slate, you could do a lot of stuff. So I do like the guards over there. I don't really like Podol too much. And with respect to the Lakers, I mean, I'll play. Hey, I could play AD. I'll play LeBron. I got no problem doing that. Again, if it's a 5-game slate, maybe you don't need a zillion points. Maybe
the only problem is though, how are you playing those guys over Julius Randle, who's averaging like 60 a game? That's my issue with it. That's why you know what I mean?
I don't know. I'd rather play LeBron. I think I'd rather play LeBron than Julius Randle. I don't know.
LeBron, okay. I mean, I guess he had one game this year. Okay.
Oh, he's got also like 400 other games that I wouldn't mind having. That's like,
no, I just think that Randall is like, he just never doesn't get 50 to 65 or 70. Yeah. Like that's the only thing. And LeBron could easily get 35 again with the way this thing. But I hear you though. I mean, that's fair. If you and if you could play both, with Embiid, you can. If we do get value, great. Yeah. I'm on board.
And you could also play LeBron at small forward, which helps.
Don't play LeBron at small forward though. If you're going to, if you don't get the news that LeBron is going to be in tonight 2.5 hours before, because I don't think he'll rest here because they're 1-2 and they want to get off to a better start. But it's just got to be these cues on LeBron and Anthony Davis this year are going to be very genuine whenever they come up.
You think so? Okay.
That's my take. But they're not going to try and tax him out during the season. He clearly is still awesome, but I don't think his body is totally changed. He looks like a center. So I don't know if he'll be running out there for 1 million minutes like he did in the past. He's not playing the 39 minutes. Although, when he plays, he's still going to get around 34 to 36 most of the time. He did play 40 minutes in that Memphis game, but they really wanted to win that one. And I guess it's kind of do this one. So I guess I can, after thinking about it, maybe you're right. Maybe LeBron is actually a better play than I gave it credit for.
All right, you want to
move on to Denver, Utah?
Denver, Utah. This was one of the playoff series, wasn't it? It was something. Or never quite made it. I think
2 years ago it was the big series. I am going to keep chasing Michael Porter Jr. I don't care. You could tell me he put up 10 fantasy points. It doesn't mean a thing to me. I am a little concerned that the way that they're using Aaron Gordon and Will Barton is affecting him a little bit. But as his price gets cheaper and people stop playing him, I'll be interested. The problem I have tonight is I don't think people aren't going to play him. I think they are going to play him. They're on a back-to-back. They lost to Cleveland at home last night. It would be a tough back-to-back, I would say, in general, but Denver to Utah is a little different because they're both elevated, so it's not quite the same adjustment that players have to make, just from a breathing standpoint. So we have all these guys in Denver, and they're all rating to be fine for me. I don't have a incredible take on anybody here. I don't, in general, love playing Aaron Gordon. I don't, in general, love playing Will Barton, although they've been utilizing him a little bit more. I think I still like Porter. The problem is the ownership thing, although he keeps projecting to be really highly owned. And then by the end of the day, it comes down a little bit. Yesterday, he was owned pretty highly. But that's what I'm doing. I don't think I want to play Jokic. And it's not because I'm so afraid of Gobert's defense, just because I prefer the other players in his price range. At the same time, maybe you could argue that, a lower owned Jokic, we don't get many opportunities for that. But for me, it's going to be, I think Michael Porter Jr. is my favorite. And sadly and weirdly enough, I kind of think Aaron Gordon is like a reasonably safe play on the other, if you're not going to do the Porter thing. I think it feels really weird to say about Aaron Gordon, but he is 4,900. It's kind of getting to a crazy point. Aaron Gordon and Lou Dort is something that probably will come up for some of us as the day goes on, if you're going to consider that price range. On the Utah side, like Mike Conley is going to have plenty of games where 5,700 is going to feel too cheap. I am not a guy who plays a ton of Mike Conley. This is a decentish matchup for him. I don't really have a whole lot of love for the rest of the Utah side of things. You could make an argument Bogdanovich could always get hot. Maybe you could take a shot there. Not for me, probably. One day, Donovan Mitchell is going to put up 60 very soon. And I think he's a really, really good long shot play. He shot the ball. He's 15 for 42 from the field this year. He's not going to keep shooting 35%. Conley does take away some of his upside and all that stuff. But I think he's interesting. I think he's my favorite, like of the really weird off the board plays. He and if you play Mitchell and Randall, who are both going to be lowish owned, I think that those guys in the high price tier are probably a little more interesting to me than even the Lakers guys are as of right now. So the one guy I didn't mention is Monty Morris, who I'm fine with, but I just don't think it's value. I don't feel like I really want to use right now. How about you?
I think that Conley play is reasonable. I think that he's my favorite option on the Utah side. Utah is just overall just pretty balanced. So until the playoffs, so usually I'm not going to come up with too much from the Utah side, but Conley does seem like a reasonable play. Certainly my favorite of all the Utah plays. With respect to Denver, I think I agree with what you said. I like Jokic as well, but I just might like Luka, for example, better, or Embiid better. But the thing that's interesting is when you have to break ties like that, maybe we should be looking at this blowout stuff. Like between Luka and say Jokic. One thing I won't say promise you, but Jokic certainly rates to be in a much tighter game than Luka does, right? And Embiid, for example, rates to be in a much tighter game than Luka is, right? So maybe Luka is not quite. Maybe we should factor in that blowout at least to some degree, and maybe I'm underestimating the Jokic play a little bit. Like if a lot of people go and play Embiid, maybe Jokic as a low, maybe Jokic ends up low owned, which is.
I think that Embiid will be higher owned, but right now I've got them within like fractional points of being insane. That's the only problem I have. But I definitely agree with your point.
Right.
What do you think? Because I'm really thinking about this Mitchell thing. Like I want to find that guy with that ceiling who's not going to be projecting that well. And Mitchell totally fits this category. He also plays better in tight games. He put up 43 in the last game, shooting 9 for 25 from the floor. Look, this guy could put up 60 and he's going to get going. He's going to take 20 shots. You know what I mean? Plus he's going to give himself every opportunity. That seems like the kind of play I want to take an advantage of when he's going to be 5% owned. So I think I'm going to talk myself into playing Mitchell tonight.
I have another guy who's, since you brought up Donovan Mitchell, I went to my sheet over here and I'm looking and I see Donovan Mitchell, where he's rated, what his projected ownership is. And it feels like exactly that type of play. He's not going to project all that great, but because of the ownership and just that that he's got that ceiling in there, that he might worth playing. I have like right alongside of him that maybe you brought him up. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention or whatever. Another guy who has a ceiling, he hasn't quite shown it yet this year, who's likewise going to be about 5% owned is maybe Mr. Westbrook from the Lakers might be a good play, and with that same kind of, not exactly the same, but maybe that same type of thing. Like even though it's a kind of a weird situation for him now, and even though he hasn't really shown it, you just know it's in there somewhere. And you get like you get a 5% owned Mitchell or a 5% owned Westbrook on a 5-game slate. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mitchell put up a 60 at some point. I wouldn't be surprised to see Russell Westbrook put up a 60 at some point.
Yep.
They're obstacles to both. But like you said, in a 5-game slate, if you want to try to get different with the ceiling, you're giving up medians, right? But if you're going for that ceiling, why not?
Yeah, I hear you completely. it is interesting that we're discussing two guys and Westbrook being more expensive, and Westbrook's projected to score 16 real life points tonight, and Mitchell's projected to score like 28.
Well, the thing about Westbrook's real life points is not necessarily the issue.
But his assist rate is going to be it's going to be way better than everybody thinks it is, and it has been so far this year. But it's still not going to be what it used to be, and neither will his rebounding upside. It'll still be very good. I expect him to be in the 8-9 range all year long, but on average. But I hear you with the Westbrook thing. I just think that for me, the guys who really stood out are the guys who you run your team through, and I think Mitchell and Randall are the two guys who sort of stand out as potentially low-owned, high-priced plays that you can use around the Luka thing. And you could even play them with Embiid if we can find a little bit of value later in the day as things progress, because we've seen a lot of players out, and you're changing starting lineups, things like that. And just keep an eye out for that. You know, we saw Josh Jackson was the example yesterday, and there was one of the examples yesterday. There's going to be plenty more today. So. All right. So with that said, I have my guys circled here for value. I have, look, I don't love, this is not my favorite, and they're not extreme value, but I have Burks, Lee, Dort, and Aaron Gordon as in under 5K plays. I like Embiid a lot still. I think Keldon Johnson, I guess you can call him a value play too. Donovan Mitchell, Christian Wood. I think Anthony Davis is still the Laker I'm siding with, especially with the front line they have in San Antonio. And then you get into the Randall, KP, Kristaps, Derek White, and Curry. It just feels weird, Derek White's price. He's going to be so popular. So I'm leaning heavier on the first guys I mentioned, Embiid, Luka, Randall, Wood, Keldon Johnson, AD, and Mitchell. Those are my guys I'm going to build around as of this morning.
Right.
And on FanDuel, Kevin Porter Jr., and Porzingis all stand out as probably cash game plays, but the price discrepancy is kind of hard to ignore with those guys.
For me right now, Jalen Brunson rates as the top overall value. Then you got guys like Powell.
That makes this slate feel so sketchy.
It is. That's what I'm saying.
He played out of his mind in the first game and put up 26 fantasy points. You know,
I get. That's why I was saying all the value is somewhat fragile today.
Yeah, very.
I'll tell you who's looking like a solid play is probably DeJounte Murray. And then I'm kind of into this Lou Dort thing. And you sort of almost need Lou Dort. You almost need the game to stay close for Lou Dort to also sealing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's but I'm into that. I'm into playing some of that. So I like him. Keldon Johnson. I'll throw on one other San Antonio guy, which I literally have never gotten right, is Devin Vassell. He's 3,300. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, I'll stand on everything that I said already.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy, if there's no value that opens up, that you always want to consider, right? Like these young guys who are going to have a chance if they play well. That Vassell's a great example of that. We saw the first game of the season. Haven't seen it the last couple, but it's always there. And I can get behind the Brunson thing. It's so hard for me sometimes with the minutes. Like with Brunson, he could play like 20 minutes, and pretty much no matter what. I think if the game's close, Monty Morris probably ends up near 30. That's the only, and they're like the same price basically. But in general, I think that I just hope we get better value. But in some ways, I kind of don't, because I want a tough build. I want to have something where we don't just have the obvious must play guys. And I think this is a great night for it. And you've got Curry pulled up on your screen right now. That's the guy who, look, I'm just looking at it. If based on all the other plays I talked about liking, you would think he'd be low owned, but I think he probably ends up in the 20-ish% range anyway. But maybe he is. Maybe we could argue that he's every bit as good a play as Luka. At least they're on the road. Houston and OKC are the two worst teams in the NBA, probably, along with Detroit. So there's always blowout risk, but maybe we have to kind of ignore it on this 5-gamer.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, I mean, again, this is just totally random, but I've been noticing in the first couple of games that Curry's been actually just scrambling back to get rebounds more defensively, almost to the point where they're doing that thing where there's something you can do in basketball where instead of boxing out and like going for the ball, the bigs box their man out and just so that the point guards can come and just grab the rebounds. You mentioned Jason Kidd as a coach. Jason Kidd was like ultra famous for that back when he was playing.
Right.
Everybody would box out and he would just scooch back and get the rebounds. And it's a cool way to play. And, they did that for Westbrook quite a bit, when he was on his triple-double runs.
Yeah.
And they actually asked Curry about that after he had like 10 rebounds or 15 rebounds, whatever, a couple of games ago. And during the press conference, they said, where are you coming up with all these rebounds? He's like, I don't know, man, maybe we'll do a Westbrook thing and they'll just like make sure I get them every day, So I don't know. It is something to watch for. He could, that again, if you could pencil him in for like 8+ rebounds a game, then now you're looking at 11K being not even that expensive.
I think this is a really good point that you're making. Like, and the truth is, the reason why they do it is not because it's a strategy to try and get the other guy. Like, they just don't have big bodies. They don't have.
Exactly.
So that's what they have to do.
I'm not even saying it's funny business for stat padding. I'm saying it's a way to play when you have kind of like big sort of guys, but not really great rebounders. Just you're told. I'm telling you, I practiced last night. You can tell them, listen, just get a body on a guy. Don't worry about getting the rebound. We have somebody else that'll come get the rebound for you. And
right.
that is a kind of a smart way to play sometimes.
I totally agree with that. I think it's a really, really good point. And yeah, Westbrook should go nuts tonight. I'm sorry, not Westbrook, Curry.
Right.
But I still think that I'm leaning Embiid. I'm in the other guys just to save a little bit until we find more value. Anyway, guys, Sheets will be with you, I believe, at 6 Eastern. I'm very sorry that I'm not going to be there, but I will be there every day going forward. Pretty much, there's going to be every now and then a family day. I have to go do a few practical things, and that's where I'm at today. So, Sheets, anything else before we get out of here?
Nope, sounds good. Have a good day, everybody.
Good luck, everybody, and crush it tonight. Let us know how you're doing.